Hello and welcome back to Buckle Up. My name's Jasper, this is the facelifted Hyundai Bayon, and I'm going to tell you if it's any good. Now, as part of this facelift, not too much on the exterior of the Bayon has changed, which I think is a little bit of a shame because it's quite a bland vehicle, but a couple of the things that have been improved do make a difference. So, the grille at the front is all new. It's now larger, it's wider, it's got this lovely silver accent around it, and it is quite a prominent feature at the front of the car. The other major thing that's changed up here is you no longer just have an LED running light above the headlamp clusters, which are fully LED on all trim levels, but if you've got your side lights or headlights on, this whole section across the front of the car is illuminated too. So you get a very stylish and very prominent light bar sitting above your Hyundai H badge as well. I really like this gloss grille, it looks great. The pattern in it is really quite tasteful, and the whole front of this car does look quite premium and quite safe, but there's a couple of things that have changed that do make it a little bit more interesting. Around the side, the Bayon suddenly starts to make a little bit more sense in Hyundai's product lineup. Since the Kona was completely redesigned and made larger, this now sits in its own little niche as opposed to being quite similarly sized to the Kona but less stylish. I do really quite like the proportions at the side. You've got a nice flat bonnet. You can see that light bar sweeping round, as do the sides of your headlamp clusters. Chunky black plastic cladding over your 17-inch alloy wheels. This is the premium specification. If you'd gone for the lowest spec Advance, you'd just get 16s there. But I do like the alloy design, and they are about the right size for this car. You've got a nice bit of bright work underneath the window line. Your rear glass here is privacy glass. You've got roof rails for that bit of practicality and electric folding mirrors. If you go for the top spec of the car, you get keyless entry and go, but this just has remote unlocking. Final thing that's a feature at the side is you've got this prominent shoulder line and a very strong looking C-pillar. That silver trim you have at the bottom of the car at the front matches up nicely with this new bit of silver trim that goes across the entire back of the car. And the back is a little bit of a mixed bag for me because I really do like some elements of it, but it's also just missing that little extra bit of finesse, I think. So these arrow-shaped tail lights and indicator clusters I really like. I think they look brilliant. I also really like this. It looks like a light bar, but it isn't. It's a bit of a shame that Hyundai haven't made it light up. It is merely just a red reflector. You've got your third level brake light up here, tinted privacy glass for your rear screen and a rear wiper. Large H badge in the centre, and then over here you've got the Bayon script, and over there you've got your Hyundai script. The thing that I really like about the boot is they've tied in this gloss black element across its width into this little triangle section here. It would have been really easy to change the shape and just make it end where the boot lid was, but they've tied it all together really quite nicely. On this trim, which is the premium, you've got parking sensors at both the front and the rear, but the really good thing about the Bayon is all trim levels from base to top do come with rear parking sensors as standard. I've also got a reversing camera on this trim level just beneath my H badge, and the boot is manually operated. If I pop this open, I am greeted with 411 litres of load space, which is slightly down on something like a Ford Puma, to which this is a close rival, but it is still a really boxy, usable space. And if I fold the rear seats down, which are 60-40 split folding, I get over 1200 litres back here, which is really quite good. The luggage space is quite usable. There are tie-down points on this false floor. You've got a little strap over on one side as well as a cubby down there too. You can also, a feature I really like, lower the parcel shelf against the back of the rear seats, so you don't need to take it out of the car if you've got something tall. This false floor is quite big. You can drop it down and that gets you a little bit more space, but if you have it in place, you've got quite a flat load area. Underneath that false floor, quite a bit more space, and then underneath the subfloor, there's quite a large wheel well, which has got your tyre inflation kit and a couple of other tools in it. As well as the tie-down points and cubbies back here, you've also got a curry hook on both sides of the boot and a lamp over on the right-hand side. Unfortunately, no 12-volt socket back here, but for the size and class of car, it's a really practical boot. So, the back of the Bayon, something that will be pretty critical if it's to be a practical family crossover, and I'm pleased to report it's relatively good back here. Now, this seat is in my own driver's position and I've got plenty of leg room here. However, even if the driver were taller, I would still just about have knee room. Headroom is reasonable, but again, somebody who is kind of 6 feet or 182 centimeters tall might begin to have to slouch back here because the roofline does begin to dip away at the back of the vehicle. At 173 centimeters, I'm actually pretty good for space back here, I must say. In terms of material quality, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. You've got quite cheap feeling materials on the door cards, but they do at least feel well assembled. You do have some nice textured plastic to those door cards, but again, it's all relatively price focused back here, so it's not a very premium feeling cabin. That being said, the material on the seats is very supportive. It's a good squidgy foam, but it has quite a lot of structure to it. I do also really like the contrast blue stitching you've got on these seats as well. Centre seat's quite flat and a little bit higher than the outer seats, so 3 people back here shouldn't be too difficult in a pinch. The floor's pretty flat and there's a very small hump in that centre section. So again, 3 passengers back here you should actually be able to do if you need to. Practicality is reasonable, not great for this class of car, but it's okay. So there's a small cubby down here as well as a USB Type-C socket. I've got electric windows and pretty good sized door bins that do hold a reusable bottle of water. I do like those. There's no armrest in the centre though, which is unfortunate. You've got ISOFIX points behind zipped covers on both of these outer seats, and you've got somewhere to tuck your seat belt if you're folding the seats down so it doesn't get caught, and I do really like that Hyundai think of little things like that. A final point of practicality is on the back of the passenger seat you've got a map pocket, but you don't get one on the back of the driver's seat. As a cabin, it's relatively dark, although you do have a light headlining, and if you go for the top spec of car, you get a sunroof to look through, but this being the premium mid-spec, I don't have that. Now, the front seats of the Bayon will be strangely familiar to anyone who's been in or owned an i20 of the current generation, because this cabin is very similar to that, and that's because the Bayon is essentially based on the same platform as the i20, just been inflated a little bit to make it slightly higher and a little bit larger in size. I've got a large steering wheel in front of me, which is a 4-spoke design. I've got physical buttons on the steering wheel. I've got physical climate controls. I've got touch buttons for my infotainment system, and I've got proper buttons in just about every other place as well. It's really nice to see some actual hardware being used in a modern car. The materials up front are a little bit better than those used in the back. I do have the same squidgy foam on the seating, which is nice and supportive, and these seats do actually hold you pretty well. The material on the door cards is a slight improvement, however. Now, I've got the same level of plastic up at the top, but by my elbow, I've got some stitched faux leather, and that has a little bit of squidge beneath it, so that is a nice plus point. I really like how the dashboard is designed and laid out. It's quite basic, and again, it's a lot of plastic, but it does feel pretty well assembled, and actually the plastic on the dashboard doesn't feel anywhere near as cheap as the plastic on the door cards. If you stick with the entry-level trim, you get manual air conditioning, but if you go for premium or ultimate, you get a single zone of automatic climate control with air conditioning. That is really nice to see, and you've got proper toggles to adjust that. You've got a row of buttons underneath for all of your climate shortcut functions, and as we go further down the cabin, you've got things like a 12-volt socket, USB Type-C and USB Type-A, which you will need to plug your phone in for the Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, because it's not wireless in this model. Below that, you've got a row of buttons for your heated seats and for your drive mode select, parking camera system and parking sensors. Again, the running theme here is the premium trim, which is the middle of the 3, seems to be the best value for money, because that brings you stuff like heated seats and a heated steering wheel, your privacy glass, your front parking sensors, and it just kind of gives you everything you could conceivably want. I think the base trim in this is a little bit sparse. Premium offers you a lot of kit for a really good price. Practicality is pretty good in this cabin too. Large bottle of water fits in the door cards. There's some space back there as well. Other stuff you might want to keep in the cabin. There's a large cubby down here, which is where you can lie your phone when you've plugged it in. On the Ultimate trim, you actually get a wireless charger down here. And then I've got a pair of cup holders next to my manual handbrake and manual gearbox. Underneath this armrest, another little cubby. That armrest can be slid forwards for more elbow support further forwards, and the glove box is a really good size, so it's nice to see good elements of storage in a cabin for a car that realistically does need to be quite practical. When we look at the technology, it's great as well. So you've got a pair of 10.25 inch digital displays, one for the driver and one that's touchscreen for the infotainment system. This system is pretty good. It does lag a little bit when you open a couple of menus, but when it comes to stuff like sat-nav and swiping through general settings and Apple CarPlay or Android Auto use, it's really slick and the graphics are very good. The row of shortcut buttons beneath the screen is pretty responsive, and you get a physical volume knob, which I really like to see. Safe to say then that the cabin of the Bayon is pretty robust and offers you everything you'd need. Let's see how it drives. Rightio then, the Bayon, what is it like to drive? And actually, let's start with driving, because the Bayon actually does a surprisingly good job of a little bit of driver engagement, because obviously you've got a manual gearbox, and like most Hyundai products, this gearbox is way better than it has any right to be. It's light, pleasing to row through, and it just falls really naturally to your hand. The pedals are all surprisingly light as well. The clutch has almost no resistance, and the biting point is quite high up, so that's something to maybe consider. But the brakes and throttle are all really nice and light, very responsive. Light is a running theme as well, actually, because when it comes to steering, yeah, that's quite light too. So whilst you get a surprising amount of engagement from the gearbox, you get almost nothing back from the steering. If you pop this drive mode button into sport, it sharpens up your throttle response and adds a little bit of weight to the electric power steering, but you don't get any more feeling, so leave it in normal. You might as well. The Bayon's power plant is Hyundai's little 1-litre 3-cylinder turbo petrol engine, producing here 172 newton meters of torque and 100 PS. Those figures are good to take the Bayon from 0 to 62 miles an hour in 11.3 seconds if you've got the manual gearbox. If you have the dual clutch gearbox, which is an optional extra, you actually get a little bit more torque, but a slower 0 to 62 time, so I'd stick with the manual because it's a better driving experience. The engine does need working a little bit to allow you to make swift progress, because you only kind of get a good amount of power coming through from maybe above 2000 RPM, but it's quite eager to rev. The engine is surprisingly present in the cabin though. I've driven this engine before in a number of different models, and it seems louder in the Bayon than it does in, say, the i20 or in some of the other products I've driven it in. Now, I'm not whinging about that because I do quite enjoy the little sound of the 3-cylinder thrumming away, but it's something to be aware of if you prefer a quieter cabin. You will be able to hear that engine note coming through. The car takes corners pretty well. It corners relatively flatly, and it's got firm suspension, which does mean that it can seem a little bit unsettled at times, but it does have enough grip to allow you to be pretty confident when you take corners. If you want something that handles really well in this segment, you need to look at something like the Ford Puma. The Bayon drives fine, but that's about all I can say. It's very easy to get a comfortable driving position. The driver's seat has height adjustability as well as backrest, angle and forwards and backwards adjustability. Your steering column adjusts for both reach and rake, so it's pretty easy to find a comfortable seating position, and like I said earlier, these seats are actually really good. I think they're very supportive and they hold you quite nicely too. The Bayon also looks after you as a driver because you've got lane keep assist on all models of this, and it's got the host of GSR2 safety features, so it will read speed limits for you and inform you when they change and if you are going over them. The pinging isn't too intrusive, but you do have to dive into a few menus if you want to turn it off, and you do of course have to do that every time you turn the car on, but that's not unique to the Hyundai Bayon, that is the case with all new vehicles. Where the Bayon really shines though is something that Hyundai have been very good at for a number of years, and that is giving you a lot of stuff for not too much money. It's a really value-focused car, this. You can kind of tell that because the interior has some high and low points in terms of material quality, but when it comes to tech, the Bayon offers you a really good amount for not too much money. So the Bayon starts at a lower list price than the Ford Puma, it starts at a much lower list price than the VW T-Cross, and these are all cars that realistically you could be cross-shopping. One other area where the Bayon is very good is efficiency. The WLTP claimed figure for this car on the combined cycle is 51.4 miles per gallon, and with careful driving in the real world, I don't actually see why you couldn't get something close to that. Good fuel economy can be achieved in most things as long as you are careful and moderate with your application of the throttle and brakes, and the Bayon is no exception. It's a very easy car to drive and realistically live with. So let's pull over and conclude. On the whole then, the Bayon is a pretty good proposition. Now, while it might not be as premium as something like a T-roc or drive as nicely as something like the Ford Puma, what the Bayon brings you is a heap of practical touches with just a little bit of understated presence on the road. It's a great way of ferrying your stuff around from A to B if you aren't particularly bothered about how something drives, but you just want something that will be dependable and reliable without the need to stand out. If you want something that offers you a tremendous amount of kit at a really good price, the Bayon is quite hard to beat. That is everything for today's video. So firstly, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching. Secondly, there are a few different ways you can support the channel. The first of which is merchandise, linked in the video description, as well as all of our social media, so please do go and follow us in one or all of those places. Alternatively, if you'd like to stay right here on YouTube, we do also have channel memberships available, so you can support us on a monthly basis. My name's Jasper, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.